Episode 13, titled Quick Recap, Getting Oriented, we pause for a compact refresher that pulls your early moves into one clear picture you can carry into the next rounds of work. Orientation is not about memorizing terms. It is about having a working map you can describe in plain words when a stakeholder joins a call or when a teammate asks for direction. Think of the next few minutes as tightening bolts. We will restate who participates, what paths exist, how the lifecycle flows, and which artifacts anchor decisions. Along the way, you will hear short cues you can speak aloud later, because spoken summaries are the fastest way to reveal what you truly know. The goal is calm confidence, a sense that you can see the board from above and move pieces with purpose rather than reacting to surprises.
First, recall the landscape that frames every conversation. The Federal Risk and Authorization Management Program, FedRAMP, after first use, operates through a defined set of stakeholders who bring distinct authority and evidence. Two authorization paths exist. The Joint Authorization Board, or JAB, can grant a provisional authorization to operate, and an individual agency can issue an authorization to operate, or ATO, for its own use. Around those paths runs a life cycle with dependable phases that repeat: readiness and planning to set scope, independent assessment to turn claims into observations, authorization to weigh residual risk, and continuous monitoring to prove the story stays true. When you can describe who sits where, which route you are on, and which phase today's work belongs to, meetings become short, documents become cleaner, and expectations align quickly. Rehearse the foundational terms until they feel like familiar tools in your pocket. The System Security Plan, SSP, after first use, tells the story of your boundary, controls, and operations in a way others can verify. The Security Assessment Report, SAR, records how an independent assessor examined that story and what they saw. The Plan of Action and Milestones, POA&M, tracks the work to close gaps with owners and dates that can be audited. Inheritance describes how you reuse controls implemented by trusted providers without pretending you implemented them yourself. The boundary is the decisive line of included components, services, and data flows that process, store, transmit, or secure federal information. The authorizing official, AO, accepts risk on behalf of the agency. Say these aloud once now. Fluency with the vocabulary frees attention for judgment. Keep a crisp snapshot of roles so responsibilities never blur under pressure. The Cloud Service Provider, CSP, after first use, builds the environment, implements controls, and produces evidence that stands on its own. The Third-Party Assessment Organization, 3PAO, tests independently, translating configuration and behavior into findings the AO can trust. Agencies evaluate mission fit, ask whether residual risk is acceptable, and either sponsor an assessment or reuse a prior package. The Program Management Office, PMO, guards policy, templates, and quality across the marketplace. When this snapshot is clear, email threads get shorter because questions land with the right person the first time, and assessments accelerate because each role brings the expected artifact at the expected time. Your study plan deserves a moment because it turns passive listening into durable skill. Commit to weekly themes tied to the work already on your calendar. Roles this week, boundary and inheritance next, continuous monitoring after that. After each listening session, speak a one-sentence micro-summary into your notes, then revisit it on a spaced schedule, tomorrow, 3 days later, 1 week later. Layer tiny simulations on top, 30 seconds describing your boundary to a new reviewer, 1 minute stating who authorizes and why. The routine is light on purpose because lives are busy. 5 disciplined minutes beats an hour of cramming every time. Over weeks, these small habits compound into easy retrieval when you step into a briefing or face a focused question from a sponsor. To keep the overall flow straight, hold on to the Security Assessment Framework, SAF, after first use sequence: plan, document, test, decide, monitor. Plan aligns expectations, scope, and sponsorship. Document translates architecture and operations into a coherent SSP with evidence you can reproduce. Test converts claims into observations through the 3PAO's methods. Decide is the authorization call that balances residual risk and mission need. Monitor proves the story stays true in production with monthly and quarterly rhythms that never surprise you. When a meeting wanders, name the phase you are in and the output it must produce. The framework is not a slogan. It is a shared compass that returns the room to the point. Route selection becomes simple when you attach it to facts instead of preference. Demand drives JAB. Mission drives agency. If many agencies want your service and your documentation maturity can withstand board-level scrutiny, the JAB's provisional ATO gives leverage that many can reuse. If a specific sponsor needs your capability now and will shepherd the package through their boards, the agency path gives speed and focus. Either route can succeed. The error is chasing JAB without evidence of reuse or courting an agency without a committed champion. Write down your rationale in 2 paragraphs today, and you will save yourself weeks of second-guessing later. The shared responsibility matrix is the operational handshake that prevents drift. Clarify owners for each control, name the artifact that proves it, and specify escalation points with timing and contacts. Shared should never appear without measurable deliverables on both sides. If a platform provider supplies storage encryption, your cell in the matrix should still name who manages key use and where logs live. If an agency expects monthly summaries, the row must show who generates, who reviews, and who signs. When a finding surfaces, this matrix determines whether the next step is a ticket, a call, or a contract clause. Keep it current and brief new team members on it the week they arrive. Boundary discipline keeps scope honest and evidence finite. Include only components that process, store, transmit, or secure federal information, or that directly control those who do, and exclude convenience tooling, sandboxes, or analytics that sit outside the risk story. Draw clean interfaces to shared services, record administrative paths with the same rigor as data paths, and diagram ingress, egress, and monitoring hooks so a reviewer can trace a packet without guessing. Overbroad boundaries inflate cost and cycle time. Overly narrow lines create surprises during assessment. A concise statement, 1 paragraph in the SSP plus dated diagrams, does more for schedule and trust than pages of prose no one can reconcile with reality. Classification is the steering wheel for baseline choice, so set confidentiality, integrity, and availability impacts explicitly using Federal Information Processing Standard 199, FIPS 199 after first use. Low means limited adverse effect. Moderate means serious. High means severe or catastrophic. Decide each category independently and narrate the harm in sentences a mission owner will recognize. If uptime misses would break statutory deadlines, availability may be high, even while confidentiality remains moderate. Capture justification, get a risk owner sign-off, and store the worksheet where your SSP and SAR can reference it. Once the triad is real, debates about how strong is strong enough turn into proportional engineering rather than preference. With classification in hand, map to the appropriate FedRAMP baseline and record the logic. Low aligns to the low baseline, any moderate drives the moderate baseline, and high maps to high. Select the baseline, then tailor based on real risk, never the reverse. A quick delta comparison against current capabilities reveals what is already satisfied, what is partially satisfied, and where gaps remain. Put those gaps on the roadmap with dates. Evidence will follow naturally because the work will actually occur. Underselecting to save effort backfires when stakeholders raise policy expectations in the 11th hour. Right-sizing now buys you trust later. When eligibility allows, FedRAMP tailored for low-impact software as a service reduces controls without lowering the bar on those that remain. FIT requires low-risk data, no sensitive PII, minimal integrations, limited customization, and a simple operational footprint. Pre-check against the official criteria, document inheritance from the platform with specificity, and get the sponsor's explicit acceptance of tailored scope and monitoring cadence. Lighter scope, same rigor is the sticky idea worth repeating. If complexity creeps in through plugins, deep directory sync, or operational data flows, pivot back to the full baseline early. Tailored is a privilege earned by simplicity, not a default entitlement. Inheritance planning turns reuse into speed with accountability. Capture providers by role, infrastructure, platform, security services, or government-shared platforms, then mark for each control whether it is inherited, shared, or implemented. Store ATO letters, security summaries, and testing statements from providers. Point to your configurations that enable those controls, and include contract hooks that require notice when upstream changes affect your posture.
The rule of thumb is blunt and reliable. If you cannot open dated provider evidence and a dated local artifact that shows how you engage it, you are not inheriting, you are asserting. Assertions do not survive assessments. Artifacts do.
A quick speed round helps you confirm nothing was missed. Name your route, your current SAF phase, and the outputs due next. State your boundary in one sentence and the top 3 systems excluded with rationale. Recite your FIPS 199 triad and the resulting baseline. Identify one inherited control and the evidence on both the provider and your side. If any line wobbles, that is the next 20-minute task on your plan. These spoken checks are cheap and revealing. They keep everyone honest about progress without long status decks. With orientation consolidated, your checkpoint is complete and your footing is steady. You can describe the players, the routes, the phases, the documents, the matrix, the boundary, the classification, the baseline, tailored fit, and inheritance without reaching for notes. The next action is brief and purposeful. Vocalize 3 takeaways right now: the one-sentence boundary, the CIA triad you selected, and the route rationale you intend to follow. Then record them where your team will see them. When the map lives in your voice and your calendar, the work ahead gets simpler, faster, and far easier to defend.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit BareMetalCyber.com.